Hello, this is Russ from Global Skywatch, and tonight we are having a special guest who is going to teach us some very interesting, very important things about keeping our plants alive despite chemtrails. There's a little bit of agenda information that I want to cover before we get into that. First thing I want to tell people is that if you're on the phone, you can listen to the live stream if you like, which is at globalskywatch.com/live, L-I-V-E, or you can go directly to the live streaming page at GSW, that's gsw.bz. So GSW is like globalskywatch.bz/live. That'll bring you straight to the streaming page. And I do want to remind everybody about the End Geoengineering signs. We have so far distributed 40 signs, which is a good start. I know that we can make history with this if everybody is willing. It's a simple, small investment. You put it up in your yard or in your place of business, and it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And even if there's 2 people a day that see it, at the end of the week, there's 14, and it just multiplies. And it's a very, very easy way to reach people, because what I found is when you approach people with this, a certain pretty significant percentage of the people who hear about geoengineering actually are interested. This is a big departure from what I found a few years ago when it was just brushed off. The same thing I saw happen with amalgam fillings back in 2000. Everybody was saying that would never happen. The government would never let that happen if it was bad for you. By 2005, people were going, every time I told people, and I told a lot of strangers in stores, I would just talk to them, and they'd go, I heard something about that. Nowadays, it's like most people I talk to already know about it. Now, of course, I hang around with people who would tend to know about it, but still a lot of people who I don't know tend to know about it. I think the same thing is happening with geoengineering. Now, if you want to go to the live stream or you want to follow the agenda, go to globalskywatch.com/live. And what I would like to do now is introduce Francis Mangels. Francis is a US DA biologist. He has appeared in the videos, What in the World Are They Spraying? And Why in the World Are They Spraying? Provided us with wonderful and very important information. I get a feeling from talking to him last time that he is very passionate about what he does. He wants to teach people how to make their plants, their gardens, their horticulture thrive, despite the fact that we are being bombarded with with metals in the air, and it is causing problems with the plants. Francis, I'm so glad you came back and joined us, because I think this information is going to be circulated far and wide. Welcome, and thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you very much, Ross. I'm honored to be with you.
Well, I guess the way I'll do this is this is kind of a very casual format we have here, because we just want to get information to people, and we want immediate feedback from people and know what information they want. I did put up a poll on our Facebook group, and we got some questions last week. So I think that might be a great place to start. Is there anything that you'd like to say right off the bat before we get into some of this information?
I'd like to expound a little bit on my qualifications so that we make it clear that you've got a scientist here on the end of the phone and not just another fellow with an opinion. Anybody can have an opinion, but a fact is a fact is a fact.
That's right. Why don't you tell us, why don't you fill us in, give us some of your background, let us know who we're hearing from.
Okay, Bachelor of Science in Forestry, cum laude, same thing, Master of Science in Zoology. Because of the economic and military situation when I was going to college. I went to college for about 9 or 10 years, had additional training after that. So I have the equivalent of about 12 bachelor degrees in various subjects, mostly things like chemistry, geology, soil science, soil conservation, hydrology, botany, wildlife, fisheries, refuge management, agriculture, animal husbandry. I just went to town at the various ag schools, just took extra courses, and I am a retired USDA scientist, 35 years of that, and some of that was with the Soil Conservation Service, agricultural crops. Most of that was with the Forest Service, where I did biology, range, wildlife, fisheries, botany, and I was even their mushroom expert for several years. And with all that background, pulling it together, right now, I'm a free master gardener for Siskiyou County in Northern California. And anybody that wants help with their garden, I do it for free, no charge. I'm retired, I've got time, and I believe in being in service to the community. Probably the bottom line is, I think for all of us, the way the world's headed, some local agriculture is going to become very, very important. And some of us old guys and the old grandpas I've talked to know a few things about how to grow food. And there's not many of us left around. And I just love to talk to the old guys who tell us how it was and how they did it. And my goodness, there's just a wealth of information in those old guys that are still there and can remember such things like the offset hoe, the horse-drawn hay harrow, all those things that they just carry on and on about. I think we're going to need those in the future. And
I'm afraid you might be right. Yeah. Well, that's I started gardening 3 years ago. I have realized the importance of knowing it, and like anything you get into, it's a lot more complicated than you think.
That's true, Russ. Some of it is complicated, but on the other hand, some of it is so ridiculously easy that I've taken people that, I've never planted a garden before, and I take them out and says, here's how it's done. Do it this way, and they actually get a pretty good crop, not even knowing what they're doing the first year. It's just a matter of getting started in the right direction.
Absolutely, yeah. I was very pleased. It was really amazing to me how, we kind of just dove in head first, and we went online and just researched for days. How do you do this, and what do you do, and what are all these things you have to do, and started taking pages and pages of notes, made a plan, and did it, and it was just amazing. We had great harvests, and I really confirmed what a lot of people had been telling me, is that you can grow a tremendous amount and have a tremendous harvest from just a relatively small amount of land, which was really surprising.
Well, that's true, Russ. I tell people, if you're just starting, don't try more than 200 or 300 square feet. This is, say a 10 by 20 patch. I said, and if you can make that work and you're successful, then you double it the next year and turn that 10 by 20 patch into exclusively tomatoes or broccoli or something like that. And the other patch you grow kale or beans or peas. And the marvelous thing is, if you've got kids, once the kids learn how sweet, a blueberry right off the vine is, the devil you're going to get any blueberries to put in the flapjacks, because the kids are going to be out there eating that stuff. And once they figure out that the raspberry patch and the strawberry patch can be really cool, they're into that. And the result is when the kids start getting about teenage, they look at that hard candy and gumdrops and fast food and say, that crap, hey, let's go over to deli and buy a box of blueberries. They'd take their girl out for a box of blueberries, then a Coke and a hamburger. And it worked that way with me. And it was marvelous. The complex sugars in good food you get in a dehydrated plum, for instance, is unbelievably sweet compared to a shot of genetically manufactured organisms fructose that you're getting in some hard candy or something like that. So, eat the good stuff.
Absolutely true, and I'm laughing so hard because what you said is exactly what happened. We planted several fruit trees, and we planted several blueberries. Now, Maine is notorious for blueberries. It's well suited up here. So we planted several blueberries, and one of them had several, wonderful plump blueberries come off, and we had just ended up standing there and eating them right off. Just incredible.
Oh, that's the way it goes. I have a name for that, and I suppose somebody in some website somewhere is going to steal it from me, but I don't care. But around here for the last 20 years, I've been telling people, hey, grow your yard candy.
There you go.
That's what those little grape-sized Sweet 100 tomatoes and those blueberries and the raspberry patch. This is yard candy. You want some lunch, Francis? No, I don't need any. I've been eating the raspberry patch. Or something like that. Or nope, I just got into the pea patch and just couldn't stop.
Oh yeah.
And you're chowing down on fresh green peas and blueberries and just whatever's out there. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh geez, boy, I'm eating good. And you get really healthy kids if you do that too. There's no genetically manufactured organisms and stuff and no pesticides or garbage like that on the food. And if you want to grow a healthy kid, or if you're older and just want to be healthy, there's nothing that makes you healthy quite as much as eating food that doesn't have time to die on the shelf. I mean, you eat that green pea right off the vine, it's still got all the enzymes, all the protoplasm, everything is still circulating in it when you chomp down on it. So you're getting everything the way nature intended. And it's surprising how many people I've seen that they start gardening. I'm not sure whether it's the exercise or the decent food for a change, but their health problems just magically, about half of them, a lot of their health problems just magically disappear. Mm-hmm. And you scratch your head and you wonder, well, I know it's good for you, but I haven't the damnedest idea what happened.
And it all tasted good in the meantime, too. It was easy.
Oh, yeah. It's, if I were to tell people, what to grow, well, if it come down to the most volume of food for the least effort, then I'd say grow squash, winter squash and summer squash, some zucchini, and maybe a fast, really good tasting squash like a turban or a buttercup if you're in a short zone. And if you got long growing season, grow the butternut. And those will give you the most food for the least effort. But and of course you got to have space, but if you want the highest monetary return, want to save the most money, then you're looking at stuff like blueberries and raspberries. And if you want the highest volume of stuff per square foot, then you look at stuff like tomatoes, zucchinis again, and carrots, beets. Green beans are notorious for giving you extremely high yield, especially pole beans, per square foot of garden space. Potatoes, very high, very, very high. And if you want a top-notch green, people talk about lettuce. In fact, there was a question I saw come in about a guy, ultraviolet AB and lettuce. Well, lettuce is one of the few exceptions where a high UV does give you a bigger, thicker leaf. But if you want something that's even better than lettuce for you, grow kale. And on most of these crops, you can save your own seed and plant them again year after year after year. Get a good heritage seed going. You can grow it indefinitely out into the future and probably do even your own local plant breeding, or just, the biggest squash, that's the one you save the seeds from. That kind of thing. And
yeah, and what you said about green beans, we grew a 20-foot, and this is all just amazing to me, because when we started the garden, I was expecting nothing will come up, everything's going to die after, whatever does come up, and we're going to just fail for a few years, and it's going to be very disappointing until we really learn what we're doing. And to the contrary, things grew like weeds. They produced incredibly, and in fact, we grew 20 feet of green beans. We had a 20-foot row of green beans in a nice sunny spot. They grew, we had to extend the wires up to about 15 feet. I mean, we had ladders up there extending the wires. They grew to the top and still wanted to keep growing. They turned out so many green beans. I mean, bucket full of green beans. I just have never seen so many green beans.
May I ask you what type of green bean you grew?
Now my business partner Laura, who I did the garden with, she would know. I don't know the variety.
Well, we do exactly the same thing here in Northern California, where the last frost hits around Memorial Day, and the first frost hits normally around mid-September. But with global warming, of course, everything has been extended out, at least at the end of the season, well into October, and sometimes it doesn't freeze hard enough to kill green beans till November. And that's unheard of. It never does that, but global warming is working on it. But even with that, just like you said, with some types of green beans that I grow, you plant a 25-foot row, and the row goes 25 feet in the air. And I have a little trick that I do. Instead of poles in the ground, I put in pipes. And then I have these dead branches from various trees around that I stick in the tops of the pipes. So you can see a pipe sticking out of the ground, and here's a branch of a dead tree sticking out on top of that. And that extends it up to, 25 feet in the air. I have grown some beans that went over 25 feet high. Rattle beans will do it. The hummingbird beans, the Dutch red runners, they'll do it. The Montana buckskin bean will do it. The French bean will do it. And all those beans, work for me. And like you said, you get buckets and buckets and buckets of beans. We're still, our freezer is still crammed with beans, and we've been eating them steady since last fall or last summer, I guess. So beans are an amazing producer of green beans, and then some of the rows I left and let them go dry, and of course we got buckets. I can't say buckets and buckets, but at least, let's see now, let's put it in perspective for the locals here. We got over 2 gallons of dry beans, but that isn't all the crop. That's just the stuff I decided to save. And of course we give those out for free to people that want them here locally, and they try it. Maybe they don't get 25 feet out of them because they don't put their wires high enough to let them grow, but they'll get up to like 10 feet high, and they say, what do you do with those beans way at the top there? And I say, well, pick and eat everything that you can reach. And when the weatherman says it's going to frost, then you pull your wires down and you pick everything and freeze it. And the stuff that's dried that's up there, you just make dry beans out of it, and that's your crop for next year.
There you go.
And keep some in reserve just in case. Don't let Laura cook them all.
No, that's what we're
save
doing.
some of those dry beans to plant for next year.
Got a whole jar full of them.
Oh, good for you. If you're going to put them in a jar, by the way, Russ, leave the top of the jar off. You want to, seeds are alive. They got to breathe.
Oh, okay. All right.
So take the lid of the jar off. You can keep them in a jar if you want. I keep mine in paper bags.
Okay.
And my germination rate is over 90%. If you put them in a sealed jar, that's going to cut your germination rate down a little bit.
See, I'm learning already.
And you don't want to put them in a plastic baggie either. Same thing. The polymers that are coming out of a plastic bag aren't good for them, and you're also going to lower your germination. And a seed company, if you're going to buy seeds from a seed company, if the seeds come in plastic bags, don't ever buy from that company again. Get a seed company that gives you seeds in paper.
Okay.
So that's the way you go. And once you got them, if you got a good heritage bean or a good heritage, whatever, you can replant them and just keep going and going and going. There's some that won't work. There's a few that won't work. But we're getting into basic gardening now, and I guess we were going to talk about chemtrails in gardening.
Yeah, I guess we should I could go on and on. I mean, we had...
Oh, gardening's fun. By golly, there's nothing like eating fresh food.
Yeah,
Knock your socks off healthy.
Yeah, and it tastes good. I mean, it changes your attitude towards vegetables, you know.
Oh, yeah. That's why a lot of little kids hate their vegetables, because they're eating that canned garbage that tastes like cardboard. Or they don't like tomatoes. I didn't like tomatoes when I was a little kid because they store tomatoes that come in green, and they gas them with nitrous oxide. That turns them red, and you get a beautiful red tomato that tastes like a piece of cardboard.
Yeah, or it's very bland.
But then Mom started growing fresh tomatoes, and I quickly learned, damn, these things are good.
You can eat them like an apple.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I never would have thought of doing that until I actually ate one that was delicious. And I was like, we could actually just eat these or slice them and put a little pepper on them or something and eat them, you know?
Yeah, well, that's if you want to knock your socks off tomato, what you do is you slice them and you lay them on those screens in a dehydrator machine. And once you've dehydrated the tomato, and then you eat a slice of that dried tomato, you know, be prepared to be impressed. Concentrated sweet tomatoes.
I'll have to try that.
They're like eating candy, only it's a lot better tasting than candy.
So do you dry them till they're... How much do you dry them when you do that?
Oh, you dry them till they're kind of leathery.
Okay.
Dry them till the consistency of kind of stiff leather. If you dry them so they break, then that's too much.
Okay.
Most dehydrator people that sell dehydrators, I prefer the ones with the side fans on them. I'm not sure if I can tell you what brand I got. Is that legal on a radio show?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Okay, I've got an Excalibur, and I tried a primitive Excalibur. It worked really well. I tried one of the bottom up, some kind of a round job. Can't remember the name of the thing. That didn't work very well because the bottom dried out fast and the top dried out slow. But these side vent type dehydrators like the Excalibur, I got a 9-tray job, and my goodness, you know, I dry those tomatoes so they're kind of leathery, put them in a great big glass, 1-gallon glass jar, make sure everything is dehydrated out well or you get mold in them, and then you can eat them. They'll keep for about 3 or 4 years that way. But they don't last around this house. It's like, you know, to hell with Hershey's candy bars.
Your conference recording has stopped.
Uh-oh.
Not sure why that happened. It says it's still on.
Well, let's just keep going then.
Well, let me see if I can turn it back off and on. Well, fortunately, I have another recording I'm making simultaneously. I'm trying to turn this recording on and off, and it's just not working too well. But, well, that's all right. We still have a backup recording. You still there? Oh. Francis, you still there? Okay. Let's see what's happening here. I can't hear you. Okay, let's hope we don't crash again. Don't know what that's all about, but you know you're bound to have technical difficulties.
Okay, let's go straight into the chemtrail stuff, Russ. That's where we were supposed to go, I guess.
Yeah, I could get sidetracked on this and how I discovered that kale. We had snow on the leaves, there's ice on the ground, and the kale's still growing.
Yeah, does that up here too. It's a excellent, one of the finest of the greens that you can grow. No oxalates, very high ACD.
What's ACD?
Vitamins A and C especially.
Oh, the vitamins. Okay, I thought that was some compound that keeps it from freezing. Okay, gotcha.
Oh, well, kale is notorious because it's in the cabbage family. It just doesn't freeze that easy. You can freeze it and kill it, but a bunch of frostings just doesn't hurt that stuff at all. It'll keep going all winter, actually. unless it gets violently cold, and then it'll die.
Well, I tell you what, I sent you some. I sent you some of those questions. Do you want me just to start at the top and read them off to you?
Let's go with what your listeners wanted to hear, and let's just go right into them.
Okay. Let's see. One of the statements was, being a small farmer myself, I am starting to get worried that if they don't let us have consecutive sunny days, will the needed UVA, UVB rays or waves get through to the plants through the chemtrail haze? I have a real concern about it at this juncture. So what can we learn about light and maybe how chemtrails are going to mess with our gardening?
Okay. This is familiar to me. What he's talking about is UVA, which is the long form, and UVB, which is the shortwave form, and this is ultraviolet light generally is bad for plants. Now this guy was talking about lettuce, and it does thicken the leaf of lettuce, and lettuce is the exception because almost every other garden or agricultural crop is harmed by ultraviolet light. UVA, B, or C, it is generally harmed by it. And this is borne out by a lot of research. Anybody hot on the web can search engine up ultraviolet crops or ultraviolet effects on crops, and they will find this to be true. Generally, it's very unhealthy. In high doses, put a plant under black light, you can kill it. UV is used to sterilize things. It's an antimicrobial thing. It'll kill most bacteria, and it'll kill the good stuff as well as the bad stuff. Ultraviolet light is pretty rough, but what this guy is talking about, I think it's UVB, about 300 micron wavelength, I think, somewhere around 300, is helpful to lettuce, but is bad for just about everything else. So my answer is now pertaining to chemtrails and what those will do. This is a nanoparticle, and this stuff tears up the ozone layer considerably, the nanoparticle that they're spraying out of the jets. Now, since they started spraying extra heavy, the ozone hole down at Antarctica has opened up considerably. So we've got some kind of an effect going all the way over to the poles. I don't know why, for what all they're spraying, whether they're spraying hard over Antarctica too. We know they're spraying because I'm getting results from Australia and New Zealand and some chemtrail lab reports from there. Again, it's the usual stuff. Aluminum, barium, strontium comes down in the rain, and we can catch it and measure it there. So we know they're spraying down there. What it does to us up here in North America just really tears holes in the ozone layer, which lets the UV through, which has a deleterious diminishing effect on the agricultural crops and on the garden crops that we grow. How much? I don't know, because there's so much climate and weather variability in there, in addition to the increased ultraviolet light. I can tell you that's either my hair is thinning out or something, but I notice now that when I was younger, I'm talking like just 10 years ago, I could walk out without a hat, no real problem. Now my hair's thinned out a little bit, but not that much, but I walk out without a hat now. I can tell there's a burning going on in about 5 minutes, maybe 10. It's burning at the top of my head. So now I have to wear a hat. There's no way I can get around it. And the other thing is, you still get the sunburn from the UV, whether you're in the shade or out of it, because it scatters and comes in all directions. And of course, the one of the visible light forms that's just above that is blue. That's why the sky is blue, is because blue light scatters and it's still highly visible. That's why you get toward nighttime, you get purple sort of look to the sky. But basically, that's my line to him is, maybe it's good for you and your lettuce, but for just about every other agricultural crop, UV is bad, and the jet spraying is hurting the ozone layer, and that's letting the UV come right through.
This might be a good follow-up question, is that if that UV does start coming through, is there something we can do? If we grow plants in a greenhouse, or we have a plastic layer between the sun and the plants, is that going to help protect them?
Yes, you can diminish it somewhat with semi-shade screens, and we've tried that and found that it does help to prevent sunburn on tomatoes. So we do that. A lot of our other crops, we just let them go on good luck. We find that tomatoes are particularly vulnerable to the increased UV or whatever's going on up there in the sky, but we find that there doesn't seem to be much effect on peas and beans and squash, or kale for that matter. That's the bottom line. Of course, there are other garden effects. I think one of your later questions, we'll cover that. But as far as the UV goes, it's bad, and the spraying is making it worse.
Okay. Well, at least we can keep in mind that plastic or some kind of a layer between might.
Yeah, there are some perforated cloths that you can buy at hardware stores that are kind of sunscreen cloths. They let sunlight through, and they help. And the best one seems to be the clear rather than the green cloths. So you might try that if you're having trouble with sunburned tomatoes. Or maybe just when the plants are small and just getting started, you can sunscreen them with that cloth then. But once those beans start hitting 10, 15 feet high, you simply can't protect them anymore, and you cross your fingers, and you still get good stuff. But I think it's diminishing the crop because the crop isn't near as good now as it was in the pre-George Bush area. All my crops were a lot better than 1980s and 1990s. Then they really degenerated during the George Bush era. From about 2000 to 2008, things got really bad.
Okay. Yeah, I've been hearing feedback from people. In fact, we had an issue. I'll get into that, I guess, a little later. But we had an issue with our garden where 4 vegetables just died during 2 weeks of really, all of a sudden they sprayed us real heavy for 2 weeks, and 4, in fact, one of them was the snow pea pods, and all of the plants just died from one end to the one end of the road to the other. They all died at the same time.
Well, not being there, it's a hard call, so I can't answer your question.
Yeah, no, I know.
There's a lot of things can do this, and all I can say is that chemtrailing is certainly doing some harm, but I can't tell you how much.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, this next question I have here is actually pertains to something we ran into too, because we grew zucchini, and zucchini plants, like you said, great producers, very hardy. Here's the question. Last year, my zucchini died of mold, as did most of the other plants. How can I get past the fungi, the mold, and protect especially the seedlings? Do I need to build a greenhouse covering or a covering over the garden?
To answer the last part of the question first, it'd probably be worse if you tried a greenhouse, because usually when you get molds on zucchinis, it's a air circulation problem. There's not enough air, going around through the plants, and you get damp, stale, calm air that tends to foster the fungi, and the first thing they attack is the tail end of the zucchini, furthest away from the flower, and they'll come in right through there and start to chew up your zucchinis, and it's quite oftentimes a gray mold, penicillium type mold, or a downy mildew is quite common. The other thing that people do that really hurts crops and causes mold in many cases is they have a sprinkler system or overhead watering. And if they have overhead watering with a sprinkler system, that tends to keep things wet, 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 wet. And, of course, when you get things that are more humid than they have to be, again, more mold. Now, again, going back to chemtrails slightly, the stomata, the breathing apparatus underneath the leaves in many plants, rhubarb is notorious. You can practically see the stomata with the naked eye in rhubarb, and you can see them with a good heavy magnifying glass, I think, with in some species of squash. But a lot those the nanoparticles from the chemtrails will go into the stomata of the leaves and will put some aluminum in the leaves. I'm not sure what happens after that, but some of the research by Deborah Whitman looking at trees has suggested that yes, it does enter the stomata of various tree leaves, because it is found in both the xylem and the phloem, the heartwood of the plant and the living bark matter of the plant, not the outside bark. That could be atmospheric deposition. But the inside bark of the plant, they're getting aluminum, barium, strontium in both places of the tree. And that's a head scratcher for me, because I'm trying to figure out, well, geez, is this stuff coming up through the roots too, because it's so small, or a nanoparticle, or is it going sideways, from the dispersing through the from the cambium layer of the tree into the xylem? And the answer is, again, I don't know, but we're getting some pretty heavy loads of aluminum showing up in plant leaves and in tree wood, both the interior wood and the bark wood. And it shouldn't be in there. Aluminum shouldn't be taken up by the roots. But then again, we've never done this with nanoparticles before, so I really don't know. All we know is our lab reports are finding it in there, and we don't know. Now, whether this is doing it to the zucchini or not, I don't know, but I can guarantee you that it has changed the pH, and maybe a pH change has something to do with it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's probably a great segue into the next question, where somebody asked...
I just thought of something else. I should give this guy possible cures. Zucchini grower, sir, what you could try is a light dusting of flour sulfur on it. Like put it in a salt shaker and shake that around the base of your zucchini plants. That does two things. One, straight sulfur tends to be an anti-fungicide, and it might kill off some species of fungus that might be under your zucchini plants. And number two, if you're in a volcanic soil area, volcanic soils tend to be depleted in sulfur, and it might be something that would improve the health of your plants. So that dusting of sulfur underneath the plants would help. If you dust it on the leaves, you might kill them. That's too much all at once. But just a light dusting underneath your zucchini plants. And the number 3 or 4, lost track here, that you can do is don't plant your zucchini plants close together. Don't grow them in hills with 4 plants coming out of one hill. Put them in rows and put them a foot and a half, maybe even 2 feet apart, so they've got lots of air circulation to keep the fungi from finding some damp, stale air to thrive in. And another possibility just comes to mind is, if your zucchinis are in shade, that's asking for trouble for a plant like zucchini that tends to get fungal infections sometimes. Next year, grow your zucchinis in full sun and spread them out a little bit. And a soil test would certainly be in order. And check and see if you are a little low in sulfur. And that dust of sulfur underneath the plants would be in order, especially if a soil test shows that you're a little depleted in sulfur. Okay, I'm done. I'm ready to go for the next one now.
All right, perfect. Now, when you're testing for sulfur, you just bring it. You find a lab that will just test your soil for sulfur. Is that how that works?
Yeah. Yeah, the soil sulfur test is an easy one, a fast one. I think it maybe costs $20 or something like that.
Okay.
And the standard agricultural test, they test for NPKs, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur, and they test for those 4, and just look and see what happens. And something that we did here, because we were doing the chemtrail research, is we tested for about 16 different elements just to see what was there. And that was rather fascinating. And it was our 16-element test that showed that, by golly, we were very, very, very poor in sulfur around here. And I did the sulfur thing on my zucchini and beans and peas, and by golly, the results were almost as good as nitrogen. Really, really helped.
Really?
But wherever he is and what he's doing, this varies a lot all over the country. So a good soil test is generally in order before you want to start just doing things because it worked for me.
Now, when you're saying, and I'm sorry to interject new questions here, but just so people get, I'm thinking if I get this clear, then people probably would understand the information. What happens to the sulfur in the soil? I mean, is it binding to something that they're spraying, or why do we have to keep adding sulfur? What causes that?
Well, it binds to any organic matter you got. If you got clay in your soil, it'll bind to the clay. And what it tends to do is acidify the soil. So that's why I say put it on with a salt shaker. You put on too much, you can make your soil so acid it'll kill everything. So this is, don't go into that mode. I tell you, Mr. Gardener, whoever you are out there, don't load your soil down with sulfur. You could make it so acid you'll kill everything. But put it on with a light dusting with a salt shaker and watch it. And if you really want to be cool and scientific about it, dust every other plant and see what happens.
There you go.
You've got a row of 20 plants. Well, every odd-numbered plant down the row, give it a little slight dusting of sulfur, or maybe you give 3 shakes on plant number 2 and 5 shakes on plant number 4 and maybe 6 shakes on plant number 6. Just see what you get.
Yeah,
in other words,
like
experiment with your crop and see what works. Don't do it all the same. How do you know? Maybe a gopher went right down underneath it and ate everything. You never can tell. So be experimental with your gardens. Try what works and don't go whole hog on anything.
All right. Now, somebody online just asked in the chat room, said, what lab do you use?
Any of the university labs, any of the agricultural labs, any of the EPA-certified labs, and I'd say that any town in the United States that has over 50,000 people in it has at least one of these labs locally in that town.
Now, I know in Orono here in Maine, they have the university has they do it for like $15. They have all
good place. Do it.
Yeah.
Like there's where I live in a small town of about 4,000 people, so we don't have such labs here. But there's a Shasta College down at Reading, and there's an EPA lab in Reading, which is 60 miles down the road. And I have friends that travel back and forth, and my chemtrail sampling, I just send them down to Reading, and they do it for me at EPA certified labs. So my numbers are correct. It's not somebody in his garage doing it.
All right. Ready for the next one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This question is this is like a 2-part question. What is the best measure we can take for our gardens? Are there things we can do to our soil to counteract the harm done to it?
Okay, that's probably the one you were referring to when we were talking about zucchinis. And to counteract the harm, the general effect of the chemtrailing is it tends to drive acid soils to neutral. And neutral soils, it doesn't seem to have any effect on them. They just sit there And that's probably a buffering effect from aluminum hydroxide. But one of the best things you can do is you can try I've heard of people trying various vinegar mixes sprayed underneath plants to try and acidify the soil slightly. My favorite that's worked for me very well is that salt shaker dusting with sulfur. And the sulfur, again, acidifies the soil, provides a nutrient that's lacking here in our volcanic soils of Northern California. And I find that just dusting with sulfur helps a lot. Now, it doesn't drive the soil back to its original pH of 5.6, but it does stop the creep that goes over 7.0 and bring it back to something like around 6.5, which is still, 10 times higher than normal, but it's still within a range where most veggies will do at least okay at around 6.5. Tomatoes, my first crops were excellent before chemtrailing because my soils were 5.6 and maintained themselves at 5.6. Pine needle composting, black oak leaves with grass was my compost mix, which is another really good thing that'll help your garden. A good broadleaf tree compost, and if your soils are really, basic, i.e. the pH is over 7.0, you might try pine and fir needles thrown into the mix, again, trying to drive that pH down into the acid range somewhere. Something I would like, if somebody online is doing it, would they please, and that's take your pH meter out or one of the standard store tests that you can buy for about $15 and run out into the woods somewhere in New England, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, upper New York, somewhere in there, and test the soil for me. Tell me whether or not the chemtrailing has changed the pH in those New England soils to basic or to closer to neutral, because those soils up there in the northeastern United States, they should have pH somewhere around 5.5, 5.6, like our Northern California black oak soils. It should be really acid. But I'm just kind of curious as to whether the chemtrailing has changed those soils to acid or not. And somebody, help me out, folks. Go out, test that woodland soils, and tell me whether it's acid, really acid down around 5.5, or whether it too has climbed up to about 6.6. I'd love to know that, and that's just a piece of data that would add to the pile of data. I've got a mountain of data already, but that's one piece that's missing because nobody's looked. Oh, okay, aside, that was a real tangent. Sorry about that, Russ.
No, that's fine.
But
that's fine.
But that's the general thing. Compost, sulfur, any kind of acidic type plant material helps to try and keep your soil pH down in that acid range, just somewhere around 6 if you can get it. 6.5 is still pretty good. 7 is acceptable. You start getting above 7, you're going to start to see some crop problems generally if you go much above 7. And if this person already has a problem with alkaline soils, one of the standard rules is don't put wood ash on your soil. That will drive your pH sky high up into the 8s. 8.0, 8.5 is not unusual for people that put wood ashes on their vegetable gardens and then wonder how come the production is so poor. Basically, don't do that. Don't put the wood ashes out. Don't put the lime on it unless you know what your pH is already. Get all the lime manufacturers in the world mad at me now because I'm telling them don't put lime on. Get a soil test first and see where it is. And manage your garden as best you can to try and keep your pH somewhere around 6.0, 6.5. I think I've covered that one.
All right, good. We've got some. What I'll do is I'm going to open up the phone lines for anyone who wants to press *6. I'll do that right now. So just hang on for just a sec there. Okay. Well, that announcement makes it really clear. So if you've called in and you have a question, go ahead and press *6, and that'll put you in the queue for a question. And while we're waiting for questions, we do have people in the chat room who want to know. Let me find one that we haven't covered, because actually you covered quite a bit of this, some of these questions. One of the questions, this might be simple, I'm not sure, but it says, or maybe it's kind of like what we already covered, but somebody said, is there a way to remove aluminum from the soil? Oh, I'm sorry, hold on there. My bad, Francis. Let's get you back on here when we went to Q&A. There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay, one of the problems with the aluminum, barium, strontium that's coming down mainly in the chemtrails and the deposits of lead and mercury and stuff that comes out of coal-burning plants back east, and lead, by the way, is a major component of aviation fuel, so you're getting rained on with lead if you've got a lot of air traffic. But one of the characteristics of this, these are elements. There's no way to get rid of them. They are in your soil forever and ever and ever. Amen. And they might get down, if you got a well, they'll eventually get down into your drinking water too, which is why fracking is so bad. So you want to protect your drinking water, especially if it's well or spring water. And if it's something coming down in the rain, if it's an element that hits the soil, you've got that aluminum, barium, strontium, lead, mercury forever and ever and ever. Amen. There's no way to get rid of it. And that's one of the things I see as a primary threat to the whole chemtrail thing. You're never going to get rid of this stuff. It will be there forever. And once aluminum builds up to a certain point, I'm not sure what it is, it will start burning the roots of plants, and then you'll see some serious decreases in agricultural production. And when that happens, if you think the price of food is high now, you just wait and see what the price of food is going to be like later when soils start getting excessive aluminum coming in. And one of the sources of excessive aluminum right now is the geoengineering from the military. They're spending $10 billion of your taxpayers' money a year to poison your soils.
Right.
End of statement.
No, I hear you. And I tell you, as I sit here right now, a couple hours ago we got hit really hard, and I'm one of the lucky people who can smell and taste it, and it was just burning my sinuses and the taste, and it makes me swell up so much that my muscles and joints hurt. Then we got a little break, and now they're hitting us again. I'm starting to feel it. And of course, I taste it before I feel it. I start tasting it, and then as it becomes a little more intense, then I start feeling the inflammation kick in the joints and the muscles and the headache. And so we're kind of headed back to that right now.
That could also be a pH reaction. I'm not sure. Somebody suggested this to me once, and again, I'm no doctor, so take this with a grain. Better not say that either. But they suggested a teaspoon of vinegar might help.
Okay. That's interesting.
Anyway, you might try it and just see if it happens. It's an old granny recipe that I got out of an old book. Now, I don't understand. I'm not a doctor, and so I got to put all these qualifications on it. But a teaspoon of vinegar isn't that much. Try it. See if you like it. If it doesn't do anything, we'll quit.
Okay, all right.
You couldn't do any worse. You couldn't do any worse eating a couple of pickles.
Yeah, pickles. Okay. All right. Well, I guess cucumbers are very. Is it because of the cucumbers or because of the preservative or the?
They preserve them in vinegar and stuff, and that gives them the pickle flavor.
Okay, so it's the vinegar.
You've heard of pickled herring, pickled beets.
Oh yeah.
Pickles are just cucumbers that have been pickled.
Right. Yep. All right. Well, we have another question in the chat. If anybody has other questions in the chat, go ahead and type them in. We have got a lot of conversation. But let's see what we have here. What would be a good organic additive to lower pH? I know you talked about sulfur already. I guess we're kind of going back over that. Is there anything you want to add to that, or?
That it kind of went by, but some people have said, I haven't tried it myself, that a light spray of vinegar underneath the plants might do something. Highly organic compost helps acidify the soil. Again, no wood ashes mixed in with it, just plain tree leaves, evergreen leaves, broadleaf leaves, and a little bit of grass to give it some energy to get digesting. But a heavy shot of compost will certainly help. Dusting of sulfur help. Maybe the spraying of vinegar. I'm not sure of that one, but that's another one of those granny suggestions that maybe not. But I've had good luck with the sulfur dusting. And again, test your soil first to make sure that's your problem.
Right. Okay. All right. We've got a caller online here. Let me go ahead and bring our caller on. Okay, caller, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hi, it's Lexi Hunter. Hi, you guys. I have a question for Francis. Can you tell us what are the best fruits and vegetables to grow that contain antioxidants to keep us healthy?
Okay. I'd say probably number one is any blackberry. Blueberries and blackberries are particularly good. Blueberries and blackberries are like top of the list. And then any of the fruits are probably in there real good. I give tomatoes a pretty good run for it. Particularly the darker tomatoes are probably better. Any of your darker fruits, generally good. The blackberries, the blueberries, the boysenberries, any of those. And then after that, any of the fruits, antioxidant, anything with vitamin C. I think kale would rate up there fairly high. I think that's a pretty good list right there. Just eat your fresh fruits and vegetables, and you'll be pretty good. I still would recommend maybe a light dose of a vitamin pill. I wouldn't go overboard on it, on any antioxidants, but I'd just eat a really decent, healthy diet with all those fruits and vegetables, especially the blueberries and blackberries and raspberries, those things. And you'll be probably well set for antioxidants right there. That check out with what you've heard. You can also go online and look, and I think I'll be pretty well online.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you. If anyone else has a call, please press *6 on your phone, and you can get through. And if you have a question and you're listening to the live stream online, just go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat right now as I sit here. I also put a small video square of my to test the camera to make sure that the camera's working okay. So go ahead and if you're watching the stream, if you can see that, if that's coming through, just go ahead and let me know that that's coming through. And next time we'll even make the sound better if we can. So we're working on getting this all this technology set up. It's actually surprisingly complicated to do this streaming. I have spent several days just working on this technology to get it all to work together. And so we're partway there. I think we still have some work to do. But we do have another question, so why don't you go ahead with your question, please?
Well, this is Helen, and I just wanted to make a comment in reference to Lexi's question and just say that on the farm where I live, it used to be just covered all around the perimeter with wild blackberry bushes, and that I have noticed over the past few years since they've been doing this, and especially last year after we got such a bad low-flying dose, heavy dose of a low-flying plane, it just ruined my blackberry crop. I mean, I've had practically nothing. So I just wanted to put that out there to Francis, if he knows any way, how can we protect these plants from this, whether it had herbicide in it. I don't know what it was, but I had a really, really bad results on my gardening and with my wild plants. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing these problems.
Let me see. Is Francis?
Yeah, I'm there. And all I can say is I'm not sure what kind of blackberry she got, but if she knows exactly which species it is, I would go online, something like Wikipedia, and see whether that species is particularly sensitive to pH changes, or it might be something very strange like a nanoparticle inhaling by the plant and that ruined its circulatory system, or it could be something entirely different altogether, some local bug or some local disease hit them. You know, there's all kinds of possibilities. I can say that the blackberries we have here in Northern California still produce pretty well, but we're having some problems with the bees fertilizing them, so the crops haven't been good the last couple of years. So, like I said, anything could be causing this. But that is a side effect that one must watch out for now, is we don't know what they're doing to the bees. Maybe, maybe not. It's a head-scratcher because this is, you know, we are the guinea pigs in this grand military experiment to keep the oil and coal party going with the corporations. And a corporation doesn't look at the side effects. They only look at whether their pot of money that they're dedicated to is growing or not growing. So, again, side effects of these nanoparticles are just damned if I know. You can't tell. And something I've always asked for, but generally get dismissal from politicians and the military, is I'd like an environmental impact statement and somebody look at this dusting of aluminum, barium, strontium and say, what is the effect to our agriculture and to human health and to various plants from this dusting of aluminum, barium, strontium? What is it doing? What will it do to our health? What will it do to our neural systems? What will it do to our digestive systems? What will it do to the animals? What will it do to various insects? What will it do to the birds? And the answer to all those questions is we're getting some ideas, but we really don't know because nobody's looked, and right now I don't think Peabody or Standard Oil cares. And therein lies the problem.
Okay. All right. Let me get our next question on here, our next caller. Okay, caller, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, you mentioned protecting the crops with a sunscreen for the UV rays, but it's also concerned about the nanoparticles getting into the leaves and the stems and whatnot. So I was wondering if you had any ideas on what you might be able to do to protect the crops, especially perhaps like row crops, the beans and whatnot. It's a little bit difficult to build a hoop barrier. What sort of ideas do you have on that?
Wow. I look at it as the unknown, almost insurmountable problem, and I really don't know. A nanoparticle is 1/10,000,000th of a meter. This is so small that the bombardment of air molecules is quite enough to keep one of them afloat for quite a long time. And the only reason they come down is because they attach to dust or dirt or pollen or water molecules, and eventually they do come down. But when they're coming down in a rain of particles 1/10,000,000th of a meter in diameter, that means that just walking by will stir up whatever's on the ground, and it'll go up into the bottom side of the leaves as well as falling on the top side of the leaves. I just can't figure out any way to, one, keep from breathing the stuff, 2, keep the plants from breathing the stuff, or keep the dogs and cats from breathing the stuff. And those plants that breathe it the most and those people that breathe it the most are probably going to be the most subject to problems. The only thing I could possibly suggest to help is live a healthy lifestyle, lots of fruits and vegetables, eat right, shun GMOs, shun fast food, shun of these genetically modified organisms in the food if you can. Corn, soybeans in particular are the baddies. Duck those as much as you can. Try and get your exercise anyway. Buy an air cleaner. While it won't filter out a nanoparticle, it'll filter out stuff as small as a smoke particle. And there's a lot of those aluminum nanoparticles are on the smoke particles and on the dust particles and on everything else that air cleaner with a HEPA filter, HEPA filter, it's going to get some of it, but it won't get all of it. And I would suggest that it might be healthier for you to do exercises in a room that's maybe got a couple of these air filters going than out there running in the air pollution of the city down the city streets. However, again, the problem, we really don't know. We've never done this to a human population before, and we're not sure if we're going to get something like silicosis black lung disease like coal miners got, or whether it'll just go through us and no problem at all. We don't know. There is no research. The military has done no research. The coal companies and oil companies have done no research. The scientists have been kind of gagged on it, so they can't do any research. All we have is a bunch of independent scientists here and there looking, trying to find out. But what it comes down to is nobody's really looked very hard, but they're doing it anyway. And we know it's doing it. We've got the lab reports, mountains of lab reports that show that they're doing it, but we don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so we just, obviously I know that the price on human health is great because I'm in touch with a lot of people who are suffering, and I feel it myself. Francis, can you still hear me okay?
Yes, I'm still there. You're still there.
Okay, great. Yeah, my phone cut out twice, so I don't know, just suddenly went to dial tone. First time I've ever had this happen, so...
well, maybe they're listening to us, and we're considered, one of the most dangerous reactionary things you can do in the whole world of America these days is grow a home backyard garden.
Yeah,
that doesn't play in with the corporate idea at all.
No, in fact, a lot of people seem to have gotten raided, and I've seen story after story on Facebook where people post these links to stories where people have had their gardens ruined because for whatever, I don't know what all the reasons were. Maybe the homeowners association didn't like it. In some cases, there was no explanation, but they had the police come over and just tore up people's gardens.
I've heard stories of various raids on various farms. Usually it had something to do with some kind of certification, organic certification, or something like that. I don't know of any cases locally, but there have been some reports on the web of things like that happening. And I'd have to say that I don't know. I know of only one confirmed report, and there have been the usual, looking for marijuana raids. There was a case up in Montana years ago where they claimed a hillside was full of marijuana, and they held a big raid with guns and everything. And one of the professors from the forestry school, his name was Mel Morris, actually went out and said, "What in the thunder are you boys doing out here in back of the university?" And he said, and they said, "Go away. This is none of your business." And old Mel, looked at it. Morris looked at it and said, "Well, can I see some of your plants? I'm a professor here. Here's my identification." Said, "Okay, you can see some marijuana plants." And it turned out that the federal agents had harvested 24 bags of blue lupine. It vaguely resembles marijuana, but and then the professor says, this is blue lupine. This isn't marijuana. And they looked at it, got it confirmed with a couple other botanists, and it just goes to show you that, I don't know what it goes to show you, but it does go to show you something. But that's a true story. So there is a lot of very strange things going on there, but a lot of this, I think, might be just scare tactics. I'm not sure whether it's real or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you what you said earlier about just really seems that growing your own stuff is really being frowned upon, and I just personally believe it's none of the government's business.
Well, since when was it illegal? The government in World War II said, grow a victory garden. And basically that's what I've got. And if the younger listeners out there, ask your grandma what a victory garden was. And, I can't believe that the government's up tearing everybody's carrots and radishes out of the ground. I just can't believe that. That sounds a little strange to me.
Yeah, well, not only that, but they don't like raw milk very much.
Well, I can understand that because sometimes the sanitation in some of the wildcat dairies out there is kind of bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my grandpa was a grade A dairy farmer up in Montana, and there was many a time I spent feeding the cows or swishing out the manure trough in back of the milking cows. I did a lot of that as a young boy. And so I know something about, I grew up in an agricultural area, and this is the way it was. And there was a farm in that area. They said they shut him down because he was too unsanitary.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that going on, and I'm thankful that they're doing it, but I'm also quite aware that there's a lot of stupidity going on, like harvesting 24 bags of blue lupine thinking it was marijuana.
Yeah.
God, that was funny.
Yeah, that is an amazing waste of money, it seems like.
Yes, it was. It was hilarious when we found out about it.
And there's probably a lot more.
Think of all the taxpayer money that they spent harvesting a couple dozen bags of lupine. My goodness. It does vaguely.
I wonder how often that goes on and we don't actually hear about it.
Oh, yes, there's lots of stuff. And if you're going to go on a tangent of taxpayers' money, your government is spending $10 billion with a B dollars a year to do geoengineering with jet spraying. $10 billion a year.
Yep, taxpayer money going to do something that is apparently destroying the ozone layer, destroying agriculture, destroying the health of everything. I can't see anything good coming from it. Is there anything good?
Well, the neural problems are definitely there. We covered that in a previous program about neural disease, autism, Alzheimer's, and all that is aluminum linked, that is growing by leaps and bounds in America, and especially here in Northern California, where they spray the West Coast like hell they spray the West Coast. The wave of chemicals goes all the way back east, and that's why you boys are getting all the floods in the Mississippi, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas states down there, just the other side of the Mississippi. That's California water over there. And that's why they spray so heavy here in California. And of course, not a lot of it comes down all at once in the rain, but a lot of it makes it over the Rocky Mountains. And when it has to start rising again once it hits the Mississippi, you get these marvelous dumps of rain and superstorms and tornadoes. And a lot of that is global warming, but a lot of that is considerably aided and abetted by geoengineering spraying by the military.
One thing that I can that I wish you talked a little earlier about air filters not removing nanoparticles. I'm one of the lucky minority of the population that can actually smell and taste the chemtrails. And
it's kind of an acrid taste, I would bet. Kind of an acrid taste.
Well, I'll tell you, there's different kinds of chemtrails, and they're on schedules. Some, the one, and the schedules change about every 3 months roughly. Sometimes they'll go for 6 months before they change a schedule, but usually it's about 3 months. And after dark, they'll start spraying different stuff. It has a different taste to it. It's usually harder. They spray harder at night. But as someone who can smell and taste it, I can tell you that I actually wrote an article testing a number of air filtration devices, and none of them removed the smell or taste of chemtrails from the air. The only luck that I had was with water-based. I actually built a machine that sprayed water into a big container and then passed air through it. And that was the only thing that actually decreased the intensity in the air. It didn't take it all out, but of course it raised the humidity up so far that you had to run a dehumidifier in the room.
Well, I would imagine, Russ, that if you did that and put just a lot of water vapor in the air, really thick water vapor, that would capture a lot of the nanoparticles and precipitate them out. Onto whatever, a cold glass surface or whatever, but it might bring some of it out. That sounds like a possibility, but of course that's impractical on a large scale. You still have to walk downtown, and you still have to go out of the house, and I still have to tend my garden. So right now I'm just kind of crossing my fingers and saying, I know I'm breathing it. I hope it ain't killing me. So the best you can do is keep your health as good as you can. But, and about the taste, yeah, I'm sure they changed the formulas, because we've gotten several tests that have the usual aluminum, barium, strontium, but then we get some that instead of having mostly aluminum, some barium, strontium, we get some with 0 aluminum, all barium, no strontium, or 0 aluminum, all strontium, no barium, 0 aluminum, all barium and strontium, and then some of the other where it's all aluminum, no barium, no strontium. So there's all kinds of combinations that they're playing with. Yeah. What is that in statistics? 3 times 3, that's 9 variations out there, and then all kinds of infinite amounts in between, and you're probably tasting whatever variations are coming out there. Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's not reaching, it's not like it's something that's difficult to taste. It is so overwhelming that I actually wear a wet mask. That helps me tremendously, which is basically wetted washcloths folded into quarters. I use 2 of them on top of each other. They're kind of relatively thin washcloths, because you can't breathe through them if you have them too thick, and you can't breathe through them if they're too wet. So you have to get them just the right thickness, or if they're thicker, you use less water. But you kind of adjust it so you can breathe through it, but you want some resistance. And that actually has helped tremendously for me. Well, the human being has a lot of remarkable variations in our species.
Yeah.
And you're one of those that has apparently a remarkable taste and smell sense that most people don't really have it that well. I've seen some remarkable hearing in various individuals. Mm-hmm. And there are some remarkable trained tasters, particularly in the wine industry. You see some remarkably well-trained taste buds. And some people, it's legendary what good eyesight they have, and it's legendary. Some people are blind as very, practically blind for whatever reason. So that we're an extremely variable species.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I certainly wish everybody tasted what I do, because they would be on fire as much as I am, because it has just it has, and the other people I've been in touch with who also are very sensitive tasters and can smell things very sensitively, it has just wrecked their lives. It's really, really wrecked their quality of life, as it has mine. So, well, I'll tell you what, we're moving on. We're a couple minutes away from 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Probably good time to wrap this up. I really appreciate coming on here. I know that I really think that we could talk about this stuff for many hours, because there's so much.
Yes, quite so. Gardening is a subject. There's volumes and volumes of books, not to mention what's online. But even with books, I've got a bookshelf that's about 4 feet wide and about 5 feet high, crammed solid with various garden books, because I'm an old guy. I still like paper. And when I can't get on the internet, the paper still works.
Yep. Yep. I hear you. I'm a paper fan too. I'm learning to like. I like both, but paper is still useful. Very useful.
Well, send me an email, Russ, if you want to do something on one of these subjects again. But I think this has been a profitable exchange for your listeners, and thank you so much for having me on your show again.
Well, thank you, Francis. And I really do want to do this again sometime before long, and we'll get into some more specifics and have some more questions prepared for you. So thank you so much.
And thank you again, Russ. And I honor your listeners and appreciate what you're doing. And, well, let us fight the good fight. If we can't be a community, I'm sure we will all be serfs and peasants and slaves after a few more years.
All right.
I hope not. I hope not. But somehow I have kind of a feeling it might be headed that way. Yeah.
Things do appear to be going that way. Well, I want to invite everybody to stick around and talk among each other if you like. I'd like to remind everyone that in the future, every Monday night at 8:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Pacific, we have a conference. We don't always have guests. Sometimes we just talk and coordinate our efforts and help each other and exchange information and help each other to coordinate events or do other things, other projects that we're working on. But if you want to come join this conference on Monday nights at 8:30 Eastern Time, you can go to globalskywatch.com/live. And that's the way it works. And I hope that we get more and more people. We got a pretty good crowd here tonight. A lot of people streaming, pretty good crowd streaming. So we're continuing to grow and get more people. And a lot of people are listening. In fact, the recording that we made with Dane a couple weeks ago has, I would say, pretty much gone viral. It is well over 35,000 views in the last couple of weeks. And as a result, I've gotten 4 radio interviews, I think probably came indirectly from that video. So when you do something small, or if you're willing to make videos or get this audio out there, or put an NGO engineering sign in your yard, or put a bumper sticker on your car, we've got to get this in front of people's faces so they become aware of what's going on, because what you find is most people aren't even looking up. I'll leave the night at that. Please stick around and everybody can chat. And we'll see you next week.